what's going to be helpful for you. Oh, thanks for recording, Karen. Thank you. You remembered.
That's the thing, because I'm concentrating on one thing, so then I forgot to do the other thing, you see.
Yeah.
ADHD for you.
Okay. Oh, thank you. This image, thank you for the person that put there. This image was actually made by one of our autistic colleagues called Jill Boyd, and she has her own website. So we will be sending out the slides later, so you will be able to click on that link and see some more of her art. In fact, I think some of her art is displayed in the headquarters of where we work, which we obviously am being really careful not to disclose. Okay, so let's move on then. Nope, that doesn't work. How do I move my screen? Oh, there it is. Oh, I didn't put your picture on, Karen. Never mind. Your face is here anyway. It's on the next one. Yeah. So I am a speech and language therapist. I work in West Yorkshire. That I'm moving to a new company that's based in Bristol. I also am a co-founder of a peer support network that I set up just over a year ago, and you'll see the celebration posts all over Twitter at the moment. Karen, do you want to introduce yourself? I'm autistic, ADHD, and so I'm waiting for an ADHD assessment. I am diagnosed autistic, although I self-identified for quite a long time before that, just because where I live, they didn't have a diagnostic service on the NHS. And I've also got PTSD, which has made my working life very tricky.
Will you click onto my slide?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
And it's got my,
there we go.
I think someone wants to come in.
Oh, do you want them all? Do you want them or not yet?
I didn't know that. Yeah, I didn't know that we're going to do that. I didn't plan that.
Yeah.
My name's Karen Gilbank. I'm an advanced practitioner lead social worker and a practice educator, working a social work development team. My pictures are a reflection of, and we'll go into it in a bit more detail later, but just sort of the questions are, what does it take to look autistic? Because that's sometimes the question, oh, I didn't think you were autistic. And I have a diagnosis of ADHD as well. I was diagnosed later in life, following my children being diagnosed. It made me question, actually, is that why I feel the way I do? But everything was so normal in my house that it was just a normal to me. So I've really felt having a diagnosis helped me a lot. I think that's about it, really. I mean, I could talk forever, but obviously we've only got an hour, so I'll pass back over
definitely.
to
I was going to say, I'm just trying to I've just been reading people's comments there, so I've got quite a mixture of different people in this in the group today. So we'll try and kind of answer any questions, but we'll definitely leave some time at the end to answer questions and go through. You know what I mean. Anyway, let me just crack on. Otherwise, I'll just stand here waffling away. Right. So we wanted to kind of cover. We've had this massive PowerPoint, and we've just kind of pared it down today, just so that we had time to give you time to ask you questions. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the lived experience of neurodivergent employees. When we talk about neurodivergent employees, a lot of people think of neurodivergent of just being autistic. It isn't. So neurodivergent is the opposite of neurotypical. So neurotypical is that really, it doesn't mean it's a typical brain. It means it just means the majority brain type in this, and it can be relevant to the particular country that you're in as well. So in this country, the majority brain type is what we call neurotypical. And there's about 7 to 17% of the population who would be classed as neurodivergent. So that might include your 10% who are dyslexic, dyspraxic, you've got ADHDers make up about 5 to 7% of the population. You've got autistic, and the most recent figures around 3% in the UK. You've got any acquired neurodivergence, and that might be like from a brain injury, or you've got people that stammer also come under neurodivergence because the brain is working differently. It's not this, it works different from the majority of people. Okay. So, and then we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that we have noticed that are working. I'm going to tell you a bit more about my the peer support networks that we're in, and we can kind of show you kind of the scope of where we've learned all this from as well, and then some recommendations that we think would be really helpful for neurodivergent staff in the places where you work, or for yourself if you are neurodivergent. So Karen, I'm going to pass back to you.
Thank you. And we've not done a practice of this either, so
no, we haven't. So
in the trust I work in, we have developed a staff network. Currently have 13 members at the moment, and it is growing. It only started off with, I think, about 4 or 5 of us that regularly attended. So it's a bit of a slow grower, but I think we're kind of developing it more and more as time goes on. We don't ask for any formal diagnosis. We don't need proof. We would never ask somebody to prove that they are diagnosed. And it's essentially for peer support and advocating, advising each other, sharing experiences, and just in terms of reasonable adjustments and stuff. And because we don't always, as somebody diagnosed with autism, ADHD, I don't always know what I need as a reasonable adjustment. I can't always identify it. So sometimes listening to other people's ideas helps me to think, oh yeah, that'd be good for me. So we've tried to, it was kind of a bit, we join every month, and we didn't really have a kind of a format to it, but we've made it more structured because we felt like it met the needs of everybody, made it more inclusive. So some people like the structure of having the first half of it. We have maybe a topic or something that we're going to discuss, and then we have a kind of unstructured bit towards the end where we can just basically, I don't know, have a bit of a moan or a whinge about something, and we're there to kind of listen to each other, but people have the opportunity to leave at that point if they find that bit difficult. So we've tried to make it as inclusive as we can, and we have a whole Teams group, so we share information on there as well. And it's not just facilitated, so we try and share the facilitation as well, to try and develop each other's confidence. So it's a safe space, trying to encourage people to develop skills in different areas as well. I think one of the things that I kind of mentioned last time, I don't know if you were there, Jodie, actually, but I really struggle with interrupting. So when people are talking, I don't know when it's my turn to go, right, we need to move on now. So, but I think we're all comfortable in that we can just say that to one another, whereas I wouldn't say that in any other kind of setting, probably. I just sit back and say anything. So have I covered everything, Jo, did you think?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds really familiar, doesn't it? Interrupting. And I'm as bad as you. In fact, I'm worse than you, aren't I, Karen? Yeah. See, she's nodding. Okay, yeah. So, okay, let's go next page. Yeah, because we had a few teething problems, didn't we, with setting up this group, and one of them was that we just didn't have structure in place, and then we all said we ended up triggering quite a lot, and then we were triggering each other. And then we tried to do starters because that's what we do, but we were so awkward. We were like, you know what, small talk isn't for us. Let's just. We don't need to start off. It makes it less safe, doesn't it, when when we're triggering.
The other thing was, I think in the original group we had somebody facilitating it that wasn't or didn't identify as kind of having autism. Yeah. And I think we didn't feel as safe in that, so we kind of we obviously in a nice, compassionate, kind way.
Fired them.
We fired them. Yeah. The intention was good, but it just didn't kind of work for us.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's all those kind
of
things.
That's just because we've got quite specific needs. So anyway, right, there we go. I set up a peer support group nationally for neurodivergent speech language therapists, and this came back off the end of so last year I was diagnosed with PTSD, and I was having some conversations with occupational health about what I needed in the workplace, and it just really wasn't helpful because they didn't really know they weren't asking me the right questions. They basically asked, "What do you need?" expecting me to know what I needed. And I'm like, well, I've no idea, because like, A, I've never been given the opportunity to think about this. B, I've always been told that a lot of the needs that I have are not synonymous with being a professional. So, for example, a lot of the executive functioning needs we have, and what I mean by executive functioning are things like organizational skills, being able to know what order to put things together in a report. For example, if I'm writing a clinical report, just a lot of organizational stuff, being able to balance the distractions of emails coming in and getting like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing next. And a lot of ADHDers will really identify with that, but have struggled so much to hide it, because actually they're hiding it because even like when we're doing our training, our educators are shaming us for that, because they're saying, well, you won't be able to pass your course if you can't write, if you can't spell properly, because English, having competent level of English is a part of, that's one of your standards of proficiency, so you won't pass it, or organizational skills, or being able to communicate succinctly with somebody, or this idea that you have to be able to, write notes at the same time as listening to somebody. That's just not possible for some people. If you've got dyslexia on top of that, it might actually be, or dyspraxia, it's really hard to focus on doing two things at the same time, but being told that, you won't pass your course because of those things is a real massive barrier. So you learn to hide it, and you don't feel safe disclosing it because you're worried that somebody's going to question your competency. And occupational health, you don't know whether they're a source that can be trusted or not. You think, well, they're part of the organisation, or you think they're part of the organisation. I don't know whether they're going to question my fitness practice. So actually it's hard to be honest, and actually often we're not being honest with ourselves either, because we've not ever been given that psychologically safe space to actually look at the things that we find really hard, because we've had to prove in our training that we are competent enough to do those things, but we've had to find our own strategies. So we've gone to, a lot of people in the group have said, haven't they, Karen, that they've been to occupational health, and the only thing they could suggest were the things that we'd come up with ourselves anyway. But actually that's, that it's not enough, we've needed more. So that's kind of why I set up this peer support group nationally. So it was a group for neurodivergent speech and language therapists, and I decided to open it up not just to autistic people, but to whole of neurodivergence. I'll be really honest with you, I was really protective about my autistic identity, and I remember thinking when we made this decision to open it up to all neurodivergents, that what am I going to have in common as an autistic person with people that are non-autistic but neurodivergent? But actually I've learned so much from other people, and actually through that group I realized that actually I'm ADHD as well. I've realized that a lot of the dyslexics are also ADHD. They're learning that they're ADHD too. And people are starting to realize, oh, actually I do have an element of dyslexia that I didn't think, because I've always kind of got by, or because I thought it was about spelling, but it's actually not just that. And then you've got all like auditory processing, so having some delays in how things are processed in your head. So the fact is, we're all coming together and we're talking about these things, and people are saying, the peer support is actually kind of facilitating those discussions, and people realizing, oh my God, that's me. I'm the same as that. What can we do about it? So then we're having discussions about, well, is there any assistive technology? Are there any strategies we can do? And actually, we're signposting people to things like neurodiversity coaching and access to work, about getting their health adjustment passports in place. But people, their managers should have been doing this. Occupational health should have been doing this, but nobody's doing this. And then we didn't even know, half of us didn't even know about reasonable adjustments, and we should, and as an autistic person who is officially disabled, people should be we should have been signposted, but we weren't. That's kind of the experiences that we've had. So anyway, this group that I've got, we've just turned 1 and 1 year old, and we've got about 250 members now, which is massive. So a lot of autistic people, a lot of ADHD, a lot of all sorts. We've got people with brain injury in that group as well, mental health conditions, and we have been co-producing some guidelines for neurodivergent speech language therapists, and myself and another person have just finished editing them. So we've edited them down from 55 pages to 35, which is like a cracking achievement, especially the 30 people we've had involved writing these guidelines are all dealing with chronic illness, disability, physical disabilities, burnout, chronic burnout, sensory things, mental health issues. So it's been a massive achievement, and those are going to be published next year. But we set them out to be really comprehensive, looking at strengths, looking at needs, and lots of suggestions for reasonable adjustments, lots of things for people to think about, to really help us on that journey. Like Karen said, a lot of us just don't really know what our needs are. So that's that. So I did this poll in this group asking people really around workforce retention. There was like 100 people participated, and we asked them about whether they were considering leaving because their neurodivergent needs are not being supported. And there was this massive 88% said, yes, I'm considering leaving, which is really shocking. And the students' numbers, because we have students in that group as well, there were 93% of them said, I'm considering leaving my course because my needs are just not being supported. The most heartbreaking things is when people have been struggling, the only things they're being offered is to downgrade their hours and to downgrade their post, their banding. So we've got some of the speech language therapists, a couple of people that have been downgraded from a qualified therapist to a support assistant role, which is absolutely shocking, and it shouldn't be happening. And they're still, but you know what, the things that they're still struggling with the same things they were struggling before. It's the organisation, it's the note taking, it's the auditory processing, so downgrading the role, it comes from a lack of understanding of what the issues are, but nobody's asking the right questions. Nobody's finding out actually what is the issue. There's an assumption made. It's obviously because, you've got too many hours, but it often isn't that. So,
Jodie,
do you want to?
Yeah, you probably didn't see me put my hand up very politely.
Oh, sorry.
Because I didn't know if I could interrupt.
No, you're allowed to interrupt, but I can't multitask, so I won't notice it. You'll have to interrupt me. No, you're all right. You have to interrupt me.
I was just going to say, one of my experiences was around me. So if I got a task to do, I might then have to go over that task with the manager, just to be really clear on what I was supposed to be doing. that got described as anxiety. And that made me feel rubbish, actually, because I wasn't anxious. I actually just wanted to a bloody good job is what I wanted to do. And I just wanted to be really clear about what was being asked, because I've got it so wrong, because I take things literally. So if I've read it in a certain way, I go off and do a task, spend hours on it, and it's wrong because I misunderstood it. So it's not about anxiety. We've got to be careful about the words we choose with people, because that just feeds in then to the whole, oh, I'm rubbish at everything, I've got to try harder, everybody else is doing it much better than I am. And it's just a vicious circle.
Yeah.
I've finished. The end.
Yeah, okay. I'm just replying to somebody because it's really emotional actually hearing people's stories that I'm just reading in there. You know, people identifying with this as well, with these experiences. So I've actually done a poster with I did a poster for our local AHP conference, and I put it on Twitter, and it's gone viral. I've stopped having requests to speak at different things since then, but I kind of pulled together a lot of the common themes that were coming, and actually these themes, you know, these themes are the same as in our group, aren't they, Karen? So a lot of discrimination and unconscious bias. You know, people often have really well-meaning phrases that they use, but actually they're coming from an ideology that stereotypes neurodivergence. So for example, on here I put so a diagnosis or a difficulty not being accepted and being minimized. So, you know, when somebody says, oh, well, you don't look like you've got ADHD, you don't look like you're autistic, they mean it as a compliment, but actually what's the underlying ideology there? It's actually saying what I have in my head as the stereotype of what dyslexia is, what ADHD, what autism is a negative one, and it's it's a one of difficulties, and it's not what I see in front of me. But then what does it tell us? It tells us, well, actually, you're not accepting, you're not validating my experience, you're not hearing me. So you're actually ignoring that I have any difficulties or any needs at all and not compensating for them. So just that very thing to start with makes us feel like actually you're not a person that I'm safe to disclose to. I know when people have said to me, oh, well, I don't think there is autistic and non-autistic. I think it's a linear line. We're all a little bit autistic. What's that telling me? That you're dismissing that my brain works differently from yours. Yeah.
Okay.
Go on.
Same as saying
just interrupt.
We've all got a bit of asthma. When I walk up the stairs, I'm out of breath and I can't breathe properly. So we've all got a bit of asthma, haven't we? So saying, we're all a little bit autistic. No, and we need to challenge that, and like in sort of advocacy bit, people need to be, those that are not diagnosed as well. No, we're not, because why would it even be a thing?
Yeah, because actually that's a micro. It's the next thing on there is micro. Somewhere on this slide we talked about, in fact I might have taken it off, microaggressions. So microaggressions are just like, making fun of somebody's spelling. Oh, that's your dyslexia again. Actually it's a dig. It's actually, and also if you're coming from a place of, I've always been shamed for having these difficulties, another dig is another shaming comment. So a lot of people talk about being micromanaged, and that's often around assumptions that are being made. So, I mean, even people that are going through some mental health things, even if you've got a lot going on at home, if your manager says to you, well, you've got a lot going on, so I'm making an assumption that you won't want to be involved in this working party or this project, who are they to tell you? But this is something that we face all the time. people making assumptions. I mean, a classic one is not being included in an event. So like everybody's going to the pantomime, and I might have said that, you know, I'm not great with pantomimes because it feels like clowns all again, and clowns freak me out. So they don't bother even inviting me to the next pantomime because they've remembered. So they, you know, it's comes again, it's from that well-meaning place, like they've remembered that I don't like them, so they didn't invite me at all. But then I go into the office and everybody's talking about this pantomime they're going to and what they're going to be wearing, and everybody's going, and I didn't even know about it. You know, how does that make me feel? But I think you can probably imagine how that made me feel. And it wasn't great. You know, you just feel excluded from something. So, you know, other things, you know, we might be overlooked for promotion for the same reason, assumptions being made, that we might not have the skills, that we might not want it, that we've got too much going on, that it would be too much to cope with. You know, a lot of, you know, doubts being sown. Not very good with metaphors. I try to use them, and then they get really muddled up. So doubt, do we sow doubt? Sow doubt in somebody's mind. So you know, and again, people being downgraded because an assumption's made that actually you're not coping with your grading, not that it's something else. A lot of lack of support. Was there anything else you wanted to add about discrimination or unconscious bias, Karen?
I was just going to say, like, things. I was a team leader at one point. I've sat in managers' meetings, so this is managers, and things said, "Oh, Karen will be really good at that," you know, just with her autistic, the way she's autistic, and it's really like offensive. Or I'll get stuff sent to me because I like things in boxes and tidy. I like it all nice and neat. I'm quite good at formatting things, but I'm more than that. But I get things sent to me. Oh, can you just format this for me? I can do more than that. That's just one of the things I like doing. So an assumption is that you do that because that's, you know, that's the thing you like doing. So
you know, but actually that's, you know, that might be fine only if you've agreed that that's an adjustment for your job. So if you've agreed that actually you're going to do some job carving, instead of people making assumptions that you like doing that, so we'll give you all of it. It's actually, if you've agreed, actually, I do like doing all of this, so actually it'll be really helpful if you all send me your formatting, as long as my job is carved and I'm not doing this on top of my job.
On top of,
which is probably what was happening for you. You're doing it on top instead of, you know, but actually you need to be able to say, so I was really lucky actually in my last role. They apart from the things that weren't going right, there was a lot of things that weren't going right, but the things that were going right were things like, so my job carving was that I actually took up a larger caseload of swallowing assessments, because that was something I was really passionate about, and actually it helped because there wasn't as much paperwork involved. There was a lot of onward referrals and things, but it wasn't I didn't get stressed with it. So, but it helped the department because somebody else really hated watching people with food all over their mouths, so because they were a bit icky about that. So it actually worked out. So I took on really their share, but then it made me, I felt like I had a better balance. So that's a good example of job carving. So adjustments, a lot of people are told that their adjustment, they might ask for adjustments or recommendations have been made by Access to Work or Occupational Health, and they're often told that it's unfair. So there's quite a lot of us that have been to job interviews and have been we've asked for questions in advance, and we've been sent back a reply that says, sorry, you can't have the questions in advance because it won't be fair to other candidates. Okay, yeah, but I'm really super anxious, and when I'm super anxious, I can't process anything. Also, I really struggle to process anyway. So, you know, how is that going to be? You know, is it fair? You know, it's not fair to me that other people have a majority type brain that can process things a lot faster.
We want to be on the same level, don't we? We want to be on the same level. I can't say these, like level playing field, field, whichever way around that is. We need to be on the same level as a starting off point, don't we? And I've had that as a recent interview experience. Where I didn't actually get any reasonable adjustments. I found out at the end when I got my feedback. And what I'd actually done is I read the question so literally. I did answer the question, but actually what I didn't do, because I didn't have time to process it, is I didn't think wider. So they didn't use the word.
Same here.
We wanted you to reflect, but it didn't say that in the question. So I didn't reflect because it didn't ask me to reflect. I answered what the question was asking me. But had I been given enough time to think about it, I might have, I'm not saying I would have definitely, but I might have thought, oh, what I could do, I could add on and say, this is how it impacted on me or them or others. But in that moment, I didn't do that. And I didn't get any reasonable adjustments either.
So it's like those were the unwritten rules of those questions, weren't they? And I noticed actually in my last one, like my last job interview, that the band 6 questions were the same as the band 7 questions, but I was expected to answer the band 7 questions differently, but I had no support to, even though my manager had said, I will support you to prepare for this, she still made an assumption, even though I said, I have really great difficulty understanding the hidden stuff in the question. She still said, I've looked at all the questions, there's nothing you can't handle. And it's true, I could answer all of those, but I couldn't do it without having enough time to process. So I did get the questions an hour in advance, but which wasn't enough time for me, because my anxiety is so bad that I actually had to spend half an hour of that doing mindfulness meditation to calm myself down. So I really only had 2 minutes to prepare per question for 8 questions, because we also had 10 minutes trying to kick somebody out of the room as well that they'd booked for me. So and I was still told it was unfair that I had the questions and I was the only candidate. So I don't know who it was unfair to. They just wanted to let me know that it was unfair. That's not a great place to start an interview, knowing that they think it's unfair that I've seen the questions. So anyway, a lot of us actually find it really hard asking for what we need anyway. We've often got hidden disabilities that are hard for occupational health to kind of, that are hard for people to see. And those might be around our auditory processing, organisational skills, social demands, sensory sensitivities like uniforms. But again, there's a set uniform. It's really hard to say, I can't cope with this. I'm like this all the time. Like badges on around your neck, I can't tolerate them. If I can have a clip on as a reasonable adjustment, that will suit me better. But there's not always that flexibility. You're just told this is your uniform. There's no flexibility on it. Again, people have often got this bias or narrow views of education because we've learned about autism as part of our training. So we think it means this stereotypical, and even sometimes the neurodiversity training that's been delivered and some that we've received, Karen, in the last year, was reinforcing all the stereotypes about autism, that actually was really embarrassing. In fact, some of our members had to leave because they were so embarrassed about what was being taught and the stereotypes that were being reinforced really through this training. Any training like neurodiversity training, it needs to be run by people and led by people who are neurodivergent and written by people who are neurodivergent and people that really understand how to make it neurodivergent affirming, because actually a lot of us have still got those biases because we've been told we lack empathy, and we don't. We have a different way of showing empathy. Or like Karen, we were talking about this morning.
You've got to have a learning.
Oh yeah, yeah,
well. Be autistic. It's just not the narrative, is it? I'll just say, Jodie, there's about 20 minutes
move
left.
on, don't we?
Yeah.
Okay, so we mentioned about workforce retention. It's a massive issue for us. A lot of us end up quitting our jobs. I put SLTs there, but I meant employees. We often end up quitting our jobs because we're not getting support that we need, or like one of our members said that, you know, when she gets really overwhelmed and she's not sure what she's doing because the instructions haven't been clear, she says she has what looks like a resting bitch face. That's how she, sorry, that's, I'm quoting, that's how she describes it, but people interpret it as such, but actually she feels scared. She doesn't know how to say, because she feels stupid having to ask again, I'm not sure what you've asked me to do because you've not been very clear about it. And she's made to feel stupid a lot of the time. So
being told that she's too intense, it's intimidating.
Yeah,
she's intimidating.
That she's been intimidating. Yeah.
And I've been told about, whilst I was giving good feedback to somebody, my face didn't match what I was saying. So I allegedly had a stony face, which I don't really know what that is. Whilst I was giving good feedback, and so I was going through this with HR, and I was, well, how am I supposed to do it? I have to talk like this all the time so that everybody knows I'm like, it's not comfortable. Like I can't help it if my face isn't matching what I'm saying.
And then all you're doing is focusing on what you're supposed to,
and then that's what I think about now.
I'm trying to smile.
Do I look okay when I'm talking, or do people think I'm being, you know, angry or cross at them? And then I'm not thinking about what I'm saying then. So it's a real vicious circle.
Yeah. Right. I'm going to move on now. So we've mentioned interviews already. So, right. I'm not going to go through these, but when you get the PowerPoint, you can have a look. There's a lot of things about us being treated differently. Often when people get a diagnosis, they're treated differently again. So a lot of it comes from the unconscious bias. People don't always realize they're doing it. They start to make assumptions, or they start to reinterpret your actions based on what they think. So it kind of like, you know, if they think, oh, that you know, how can you possibly understand someone else's perspective? So then people start making assumptions. That's basically it. But you can have a read of those later because we don't really have time. So peer support is really, really important. So we've noticed how, as a group, we've started. I've kind of like split it into 4 areas. We've started to develop a lot of pride in our identity and confidence, being able to disclose. It doesn't always go well. Sometimes it backfires, and sometimes we're not accepted for who we are. And in those cases, we end up having to leave because actually we've got nobody to advocate for us. And I'm going to come to that a bit later on. We're getting a lot of belonging, a sense of validation. A lot of people I've just done an annual report for our group, and I asked people to, I did a belongingness scale in there, you know, and the amount of people that wrote comments, I don't feel alone anymore. You know, it makes you want to weep. There was about 50% of the group, of the 70 people that took part in our poll, in our survey, that said, I don't feel alone anymore. That's just so sad. So again, people saying they've had, they're asking for adjustments. Loads of people in my peer support group that are now, and in fact ours as well, that have applied for coaching, neurodiversity coaching, that have applied for access to work now. We can support each other. We're doing our health adjustment passports, and we're doing like some peer support with that as well, to help each other. You know, those are really positive things. And again, celebrating the things and realizing, I love this quote here: we are enough as we are. People need to stop telling us otherwise. I mean, it actually makes me feel really sad that actually we have to constantly, and I'm going to move to this next one, we are constantly having to prove our worth. This is just a little Wordle thing that we did in one of the Zoom meetings that I did with one of my groups, to focus on the things that we are good at, because actually we're just constantly told about the things that we find bad. Getting a diagnosis, you literally have to go through, I'm bad at this, 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 and this. I find all of these difficult, to prove that we're bad enough to get a diagnosis. So it's not a great starting place, is it really? So things that are helping, so we've got like 10 minutes left. Things that are really helping, so having a more systematic approach to supporting, and I've put disabled colleagues there because it isn't just neurodivergent colleagues, it's actually all colleagues with disabilities that it applies to, but actually having somebody to help us do our health adjustments passport and a systematic approach. So, in the places where you work, if you've got somebody that comes in, a new starter, and they've got a disability, somebody needs to sit down with them and help them to fill in that. But it also needs to be not HR and not occupational health. It needs to be somebody that actually is a peer, somebody that's a safe person, a trusted ally. So it could be a manager, but sometimes, you don't know if you're safe to disclose to your manager. Oh, I find it, in a new job, I find it really hard to organize my notes. Yeah, you've just spent your interview trying to convince them otherwise. You don't want to start disclosing that. So you actually need somebody safe that you can do that with. But we think, we need that as a systematic. It needs to be offered as a routine. Okay, so specialist support to put in reasonable adjustments will be really helpful. So having somebody who is neurodivergent or a neurodivergent specialist company that really understands it. I can give you Access to Work are really good. They've got a whole list of actually some really good companies that they're recommending to people now. Specialist neurodiversity assessments can be accessed through there. So rather than occupational health doing the assessment, getting the neurodiversity teams to do it. Neurodiversity coaching, you can get that through Access to Work. Bearing in mind with new starters as well, if they come in, a lot of people don't know this, but when a new starter, if they apply to Access to Work within 6 weeks of starting a new job, everything is 100% funding comes from the government through the Access to Work scheme. Whereas usually, if somebody's been in the company a while, so if you're in a big company, I think they have to pay either 100% or 90% of the cost of equipment, and you can get up to like £66,000 of funding towards what you need. So it's really worth getting your new starters in, because then it saves the place where you work a lot of money. They can get equipment, they can get like rising standing desks are great for ADHDers because they can't sit. No, I'm making a judgment here now. Some ADHDers need to be moving, so having a desk that they can work up here instead of having to sit down is brilliant for them.
I know that when I went through that journey, I thought, because I didn't know what I needed, I was saying, I think Dragon software might help me to be more efficient in my work. And so I had the assessment with Access to Work, and I was recommended £8,000 worth of equipment, a lot more than kind of what I expected or that I thought I might need. But through the assessment, they put down lots of different things, like a Remarkable 2, where I don't have to write notes. That's brilliant for me. I can write on this tablet thing and it converts it to Word for me, not having to type
and you can put templates in it as well, can't you? So that you can.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
So that really helps you with organising your thoughts.
Yeah, and recording meetings, but actually being able to flag bits that are relevant to me, actions as the meeting's going on. I can just click a button, click something, and then it flags that bit up, and I get all the notes afterwards, and I don't have to read through the notes. Lots of things available that I just didn't know.
Didn't know about it.
Yeah.
So again, making sure that there is peer support. I mean, because the disability networks are great, but sometimes they're just there's lots of well-meant comments that are very ableist. So that are basically saying to us, you could try to be more like a neurotypical person, rather than just accepting that, for example, we have a different way of communicating that people accept, that we're more direct, that we don't do small talk in emails because it's hard work knowing who you're supposed to ask if they've had a good weekend to or not. can people just accept that it's painful for us and not expect us to do it, or judge us as being rude if we didn't include it? Peer mentoring is another thing. So that's something in where you're working now, Karen. They're just starting that up, aren't you? I think some of it's come off the back of that I had a really, really hard time that made my mental health deteriorate really badly. And then I went back as part of my exit interview. I gave them a really clear plan for what I thought that I would have helped me stay in work, and that my peers need. And neurodiversity coaching and peer mentoring was one of those things. And it looks like they're going to put it in for everybody now. So, which is great. I'm training up people within the group.
Yeah, we're going to have a listening event with the board directors, and then hopefully following that, I think we're going to plan to do it. Some of us don't feel comfortable talking in a group, so we do it like a speed dating thing. So we'll all be in separate rooms, and we'll get the directors to move around, but we're not going to be moving around. We'll get them to do the movement. We're going to send them a questionnaire about what they know about neurodiversity, not us filling in a questionnaire. So we want to get the commitment from up above, because I think like we've raised things so many times that we need to know that there's a commitment there to do something different, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, another thing that that I've been doing just recently is some workshops on unconscious bias. A lot of people don't like talking about this because unconscious bias does lead to discrimination. So a lot of those assumptions that we make are actually based on the ideologies that we have and the stereotypes that we have, and we can't help it. It is unconscious. It's like those, because if I said to you, think of 5 things about autism or dyslexia, I bet at least half of them are going to be finds it hard to, has difficulty with, and even us, we talked about this the other day, didn't we, Karen, the other week, that actually, it's even hard for us to think of positive things. They don't come first to our brain. It's all the negative stuff. And that's because the way we've been taught about neurodiversity is they find it difficult too. So even then, so that frame, those are our first thoughts when somebody says those, so actually finding a way to address those things and then very consciously say, well, actually, I do make judgments based on people's communication. I do make judgments based on the stereotype that I know, and I want to address that now. And having a safe space in order to address those things is really important. So I'm actually thinking, if you follow me on my Twitter page, I'm actually thinking about running those an unconscious bias training for a small cost at some point, because I'm trying to get some funding for my peer support group so that we can pay for professional Zoom, so we don't have to keep rejoining every half an hour. So again, using neurodivergent affirming language, so talking about differences rather than things that are difficult or deficits, and talking about our needs rather than, so I have mental health needs, I don't have mental health issues, because as soon as you label it as an issue or a difficulty, there's assumption, you naturally put assumptions that I can't do aspects of my job. It's implied. But when we talk about needs, then we put the onus on, if I have needs, it means that those needs need to be supported rather than you're the issue. And again, so one of the biggest things that can support us is just starting to notice. It makes us feel heard. I've noticed that you don't participate much in a meeting. Let's talk about that. I'm not going to judge you. Let's focus on some solutions. What can we do to support that? Do we need to change the way our systems work? Do we need to, is it not just about, oh, you could try this. Let's talk about being more inclusive. How can we work together to make this good, because actually things that we find difficult, a lot of people find difficult too, and you've got all of those people who are secret ADHDers that don't want to say that they find it difficult too. Right, so I'm just going to finish with things you can do to be an ally to your neurodivergent colleagues. I'm not going to go into, I'm going to send these out to you so you can, this is something you could reflect on in your teams as well. But again, maybe we can do some other training in more detail at another time. Take some time to learn. So building psychologically safe spaces so you can learn together, so you can notice, not judge yourselves, don't shame yourselves for the things that we're not getting right, but let's just notice them and address them. Let's challenge any assumptions that we have about disability or neurodivergence by updating our outdated medical models and the stereotypes. Now I've put some additional learning things at the end of the slides, so you can go away and do your own audits and learn more. So again, learn more about neurodiversity and ableism from autistic people, from autistic writers. Reflect, so taking responsibility, reflecting on your own unconscious bias, reframe the narratives. It's not enough to just read about neurodivergence. You actually have to think, actually, let's change it from difficulties, from deficits to difference. And let's actually start using that language in the reports we write, in the conversations that we're having with people. Let's talk about needs instead of difficulties. You need to be making those changes in the way that we talk about this. So again, including, let's champion and include neurodivergent voices, focus on true co-production. So don't start something and then ask people for their opinion, involve them right from the beginning in how they want this to look. Value our lived experiences, promote accessibility, inclusion inside and outside the workplace, and advocate. So the advocating is so brilliant for us, because actually it's really hard for us to speak up for ourselves because people have labelled us with those stereotypes, so it's really hard. We need people to advocate for us, to challenge the microaggressions when you see it, to challenge any discrimination. If you see it happen, the amount of people we might have seen that somebody's treated them really badly in a meeting that you're in, and you think, oh, I don't think that was quite right. Like they got teased for their spelling. Are you going to sit there and say nothing? Because if you're saying nothing, you're saying it's okay to be ableist. If it was somebody that was black and they were teased for their blackness or something in their culture, and you say nothing, you're being as racist as as a person that said it, because you're allowed it. You're ignoring it. So again, building your allyship, your advocacy, and using neurodivergent affirming language, which is trauma-informed language. So again, difference, not deficit. I haven't got time to read that. Here's a few peer support groups that you can signpost people to. Additional resources for your learning journey. I'd really recommend, I've actually spelled that wrong. That actually should be Kerry Murphy. This anti-ableism reflection tool is absolutely brilliant. It's based on the anti-racism reflection tools, but it's a really good starting place. I will send these out to you all, or Karen will send them out. Somebody will send them out. And we've just added some extra links here. My peer support groups there, I've put my link tree so you can follow additional things. My peer support group now have we're just starting up a newsletter that's aimed at allies, neurodivergent allies. So we're going to go through, so the 4 things that I mentioned here, we're going to have regular features on, for learning, including, reflecting, advocating. We've also got some blogs that people are going to be writing, so you can hear some lived experiences. So that Twitter page, that link tree down here, the NDSLT UK. If you go to that one, you can sign up to the newsletter there. So I think we've got to the end. Karen, did you want to talk about your book?
That book, Emergence: Hidden Narratives from Neurodivergent Social Workers. So that was a collaboration of social workers. So I've contributed a piece of my experience and a poem that I've written in there. Quite an easy read, but gives you different perspectives of different types of neurodivergence as well.
Okay, I'm aware that we've got to 11:30.